now it's almost 9:40 here in Hong Kong. We are actually in a typhoon. Very quickly, I think will be typhoon number 8.
Oh wow!
Oh, so even above 7 here.
Yes, that's right.
It's serious, yeah.
So I think we can start. I think this will not be a very long meeting. As I said, I think it's an end of year meeting, but I'm very grateful that all of you are able to make it to this meeting. We will, in the meantime, we will also wait for Anna. Hopefully she will be able to join us at a later stage. But in general, I think I'm very aware of the works that you have done, and also you have been trying to push forward the job or works or the duty, I think, as a justice for the Asgardia. I think you have been in office for around 1 year, so I'm very pleased that you have done quite a lot. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we were not able to meet in person during this time. But I would like to thank you all for taking the time to join this Zoom meeting. I think all of us have been knowing each other for quite some time. But allow me very briefly to introduce from my screen side. I think the upside is we have Tom here, so from Kenya. And then I have a Philu here from Australia, and we have a Carrie from the United States. So they all represent judges from different continents, and of course we have Anna from South America, from Chile. So basically, we have a wide range of representatives from all parts of the continent. So I think that's very important for our nation as Asgardia. Today, for the end of year meeting, I think this is rather important for us to look back what we have done in the past, and then we can also plan for the future for the next few years. It's rather important if we look at the origin of Asgardia, the development of Asgardia, and also the ways forward for Asgardia. This also works for our judicial system, for the judiciary. We know that judiciary is a very important pillar of our nation. I'm very pleased to see that all of us have been working very hard, have already seen the development of a complete judicial structure or framework a few years back. And now we are able to work very closely on various issues related to the judiciary and the judicial system in Asgardia. I understand it is of utmost importance that the judiciary or judicial branch should stay independent, neutral, and impartial. These days, I have always been talking about the rule of justice, and I believe that judicial independence is a major principle for the rule of law in our space nation. The judiciary is quite different from the executive and legislative branches in the nation. A lot of webinars or conferences can be organized by the executive body to show or to showcase of our country, our nation. For judiciary, in a way, I think it's very good that we keep in a low profile but get the job done. I think that's one of the most important feature for the judiciary. But of course, I think we should do something to show to the public we are independent, we are impartial, and this kind of independence, this kind of impartiality or neutrality should be real. But also, it's very important to be perceived to be real in reality, in practice. We also have noted a lot of interests from the public regarding the functioning operation of the judicial branch. So this meeting probably also provides a very useful channel for us to show to our citizens on the functioning operation of our judicial system and also judiciary. In a way, if we really look at the time when we were appointed, of course, I was appointed a few years back, I think almost 5 years already, but you were appointed a few years later. Now it quickly moving to the year of 2022. So I think it's rather important that that we can have an internal meeting to reflect on what we have done and what we should move ahead for the year of 2023 and probably the next few years. Although I think we will not be able to meet in person, but I really hope that we will be able to meet in person probably in 2023. I still have fond memory of my meetings with the legislative branch, executive branch in Moscow in the past few years, and also not only in Moscow, but also in Vienna. So I think that has always been a very good occasion to reflect on what the nation has done. Now today we are going to reflect on the judiciary, what the judiciary has done. So apart from normal operation of the judiciary, I would like to report the following major events in the past year that I have been actively involved. One is regarding the webinar on space law, which was organized by the executive branch. I serve as a panelist. And on that occasion, I talk about space commercialization and development of space law. The webinar was quite successful. I understand the executive branch have already organized several webinars, and that's one I participated and very enjoyed the communications with other panelists and also the public. So that's one issue. Another issue is regarding the interviews that I have received in the past year, which have already been uploaded to our website, which shows that it's very important to promote the rule of law in Asgardia. And it's very important to see how the Asgardian legal system or judicial system works. So this is rather important for the public to know that we are trying to set up, trying to promote the establishment of a fair and transparent system in our nation. Furthermore, I would like to report two other major jobs that I have done regarding the legislation. One law is on the law on arbitration and dispute resolution. The bill was put forward by the Minister of Justice. Of course, I would like to stay in neutral and independent, but since I have the expertise in a dispute resolution and arbitration, I give some informal expert opinion on the law. But I also have reminded the team that there will be non-interference or non-intervention from my part in the legislation affairs and administrative affairs. So the informal opinions basically touch upon how the arbitration can function in the judicial system in Asgardia. We judiciary will focus on the litigation, but arbitration will definitely be rather important. We are looking at the alternative dispute resolution and try to see how to realize the access to justice and try to promote the access to the digital justice. So very closely related to the functioning of the operation of the judiciary, I also submit draft procedural rules for the Supreme Court of Asgardian for the consideration. So I've already submitted the draft in late September. So hopefully the Space Council and other relevant parties will be able to give some response. So I think within this past 1 year, I believe I think a lot of things has been done, and we have already fruitful discussions with Asgardian Parliament, with government and the ministers. So I think that's rather important, and I always emphasize about the importance of communications among different branches of the entities within our nation. So in general, I'm quite pleased to see the operation of our judicial system and very much look forward to another fruitful year of operation of our system. But before I conclude my part of the speech, I should once again mention that our efforts in the promotion of ODR, because I still remember a few years back when I talk about the legal system and judicial system in Asgardia, I mentioned about the importance of online dispute resolution. I understand that Carrie has also talked about the ODR sometime in a webinar, so I will leave to Carrie to report on that issue. But I believe this is very important during this period of time, in particular during the pandemic time. But the ODR will not end after the end of the pandemic. This will continue. We will always put as one very important task for us to operate, to see how to help the public to realize the access to digital justice and to justice in general. So once again, I would like to thank all the colleagues for your kind cooperation. I very much appreciate your efforts during this period of time. I know things are always a lot of difficulties and challenges, but I'm very pleased that you have been able to carry out your duties, jobs very competently and conscientiously. So I very much look forward to working with you more closely in the many years to come. Thank you very much. So I think that's my starting words. And then I would like to invite you to give also some words to summarize what you have done, something related to judicial system or legal system in Asgardia. So I think we have some informal communication. I think that's rather important. So who would like to start?
Can I start? All right. Thank you very much, Chief Justice Yuan Hejiao, for your excellent leadership and for putting the framework for Asgardian judiciary together. This is really very innovative and the first of its kind in the world. And I personally appreciate your leadership and the way you are steering the court in the direction of establishing rule of law within the Asgardian, legal system pursuant to Article 35 of the Constitution. Of course, when you look at world events recently, there are a lot of issues in the world, wars here and there, and Asgardian motto of one humanity and one unity could not be more important at this particular time. And I'm sure a lot of people will be looking at what the Asgardia and its legal system is trying to achieve. And several decades down the line, they'll be looking at this and say, well, this was the starting place. Now, personally, I am responsible for the criminal law side of the system, as you very well know. We have not received any criminal cases as yet, but we can forecast how this may operate in the long term, down the line, several years later, when there is a human settlement in the outer space, or when Asgardia has its own vehicle in the outer space, what can happen, what type of crimes can occur there, and how Asgardian legal institutions can respond to that. That is a longer term view. Of course, we have fictional account of the things that can happen in that regard, and you can make a guess as to what direction the Asgardia look. But in the shorter term, currently, how does the criminal law apply to Asgardia as a nation? Of course, Asgardia is a nation based on rule of law and the separation of power. Clearly, the Asgardian parliament should legislate on matters, and it should clearly define what constitutes a crime. So the elected representatives of Asgardia should clearly state this is a crime. As we well know, there is no crime without law. There has to exist a law, and there is no punishment without a crime. So unless we have that clearly spelled out in Asgardian legislations by the Asgardian parliament and also by the Asgardian government under its delegated authority, then we can have crime, and then we can have punishment. Of course, we are only one of the wheels in the cog, and there are other institutions involved in this. For example, there is an institution of the prosecution. Crime has to be alleged by the prosecution, and we look forward to the prosecution doing its job and bringing certain violations to the Asgardian court. Now, of course, when you sample and go through some of the Asgardian legislations already, you'll see there are instances where certain crimes could be committed. For example, if you specifically look at the Asgardian National Currency Act, that declares Solaris as the legal tender within Asgardia, and there might be certain crimes that can be committed in that context. Maybe someone is let's say someone hacks the Solaris system and the blockchain and commits a crime in the process. And if that person is subject to is a citizen or resident of Asgardia, that person would be subject to the Asgardian legal system and could be sued for the action of hacking. That is a crime. And of course, what is the relevant penalty? Of course, the act itself in Article 6 states that the person could be subjected to fine, payment of a fine. That person could be expelled from the Asgardian financial system, and of course, the citizenship of that person could be revoked, or the residence status of the person could be revoked. So this is one instance where we have a law clearly, and there could be a crime committed against that law. And the matter is taken up by the Asgardian prosecutor, and it comes to the court, and the court will pass based on, of course, by listening to the both sides of the story, pass appropriate judgment. And we have other legislations. For example, we have the Asgardian Corporations and Enterprise Act, for example. And I'm sure there will be instances where companies established within Asgardia may commit certain breaches of the law that may entail criminal liability. It could be, it could be under corporation law. You may have a conflict of interest issues and various types of breaches, and those may entail punishments such as fine, pecuniary penalty, and the like, something that we can impose. Clearly, Asgardia is a digital nation, and it cannot impose like sentences like imprisonment at this stage, or capital, which is in fact prohibited under Asgardian law. We can't impose, we cannot sentence people to imprisonment, or can't impose a capital punishment, which is prohibited. But when the economic ecosystem within Asgardia developed, and there is more economic activity, social activity in the system, there will be a need for applying Asgardian legislations that may implicate Asgardian criminal law. So that's when we get into business on our part from a criminal law perspective, and I'm sure there will be a lot of other contexts in which Asgardian law may be invoked within the remits of the other justices working on this panel. Thank you. These are really some of the points I wanted to say in relation to our meeting today.
Thank you very much. Obviously, I think criminal part, I think, is very important branch. And we note, I think that's a traditional field that we are very lucky to have you to fill in the role. And I can see that a lot of achievements that have been put forward, and a lot of things can be planned, I think, in this field. Definitely discussions, deliberations can be carried out, and to have a better understanding on the criminal issues in our nation, not only in the geographical aspect, but also in the spatial aspect. So thank you very much. So now I would like to be more democratic. I think to leave to either Tom or Carrie to start.
I am happy to step in. Great. Again, thanks very much for Chief Justice Zhao's excellent speech on the independence and impartiality of Asgardia Judicial Court, and also the Criminal Justice Tiba's excellent speech on the role of criminal court and the development of criminal legislation in Asgardia so far. So I have been appointed to take charge of the civil court, or the civil judicial branch of the Asgardia court. I think one distinguishing feature of civil justice, or civil court of Asgardia Nation, is that comparing to the constitutional court and the criminal court, it's a important legal field that is less codified. So instead of waiting for legislation to be in place, the civil court can be a lot more active in actually understanding our citizens' need in order to understand what direction the development of a court should take. So there are a couple of aspects of the work I kind of want to emphasize to the participants of the meeting today. So I have been quite active in trying to outreach to our space citizens, understanding their needs and their expectations of the civil justice court. So I've been participating in webinars and podcasts organized by various organizations, including ARPTAC, which is a very active online community on arbitration technology and law. I've also been interviewed by New York University School of Journalism, which is very interested in the model of this Asgardia and Asgardian legal systems taking place. And a lot of space citizens have actually participated in those webcasts that I give speech to. A couple of issues come up during those sessions. First of all, our citizens are interested in the scope of access of our court. And secondly, they're very interested in what type of infrastructure the Asgardia court are interested in taking place in future years. So the first aspect, scope of legal access, there are a couple of issues that are regularly coming up during my conversation with Asgardia space citizens. First area is digital commerce. So we know that Asgardia has just launched an online marketplace, and a lot of our space citizens have been very actively trying to selling and buying important stuffs via the marketplace. So one important type of disputes that could have come up would be any type of disputes that are related to e-commerce. So e-commerce is definitely either between seller and buyer, or maybe something related to the authenticity and the price of the goods being sold online could be an important area that disputes are going to come up in the future of Asgardia civil justice court. A second type of dispute, actually quite related to what Chief Justice Tiba just mentioned, because Asgardia has recently launched its e-currency in a unit of solar. And one important type of civil dispute that could come up would be things related to different appreciations of values of the currency, which could be which could be a type of civil dispute, or it could be a type of criminal dispute, depending on the nature of dispute that finally come up between parties. So that's the two types of disputes that our citizens are really interested in having access to the civil justice branch of Asgardia court. And second, big type of question that come up during my conversations with the Space Nation citizens would be what infrastructure should be behind our civil justice court. As Chief Justice Zhao had just mentioned, he has been developing legislation on arbitration, on dispute, alternative dispute resolution, and also on potentially ODR. And ODR, or online dispute resolution, is something that came up a lot during my conversations with Asgardia citizens. So we're trying to think what type of online dispute resolution infrastructure should be used or adopted by the civil justice court. Apparently, eventually, this shall be a democratic process, and it should be a problem. It should be a proposal that we put forward to the parliament and see what type of suggestions that they come up with. But basically, it looks like, at least during my conversations with Asgardia Space Nation citizens, that there's an overwhelming interest in having Asgardia develop an online dispute resolution system. It could be blockchain based, considering that we also have a very unique blockchain backed up currency system. At the same time, a lot of our citizens are interested in participating in a peer-to-peer network. So it could be like a jury system that's adopted by many common law countries in part of their civil justice system for our citizens to participate. So those are issues that actually came up during my conversations with Space Nation citizens, and they really give me very concrete directions on what steps Asgardia Civil Court should take in trying to provide a better services for citizens in order to ensure they have access and in order to ensure the rule of law is ensured and guaranteed in a space nation of Asgardia. And that's my part. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. In the era of space commercialization and digitalization, I think this civil branch will be becoming more and more important. So thank you very much for all that you have done in the past year. I noticed that Anna has already joined, so welcome. And I'm very pleased that you are able to join us for this end of year meeting. Let me very briefly recap what we have just discussed. I start by opening the meeting and mention about our mission and objective for the judicial and legal system in Asgardia. Furthermore, it's rather important to see that the judicial branch is quite an independent branch, but we also have a lot of communications with other branches so that we can carry out our duties properly and efficiently. So for following on, I also mentioned about some activities that I participated, including webinar presentations, informal opinions on some legislation, and also some internal procedural rules for adoption, apart from some interviews, etc. So that's something I have already done in the past year. Then we also have Justice Filou to mention or to talk about his work portfolio in the criminal field. And also he also briefly mentioned about his vision regarding the future criminal court functioning in Asgardia, so which has been considered to be a vital part of our national judicial system. And then we have Justice Carey in the civil branch, who have actively participated in various activities and promote our civil branch and also dispute resolution, including the webinar presentations and very heated discussions with the public, community, and the interactions with the public, so which we also have already got quite a lot of useful feedback from the public to we can also reflect on what we can improve in this civil branch. As I have very briefly just introduced, that space commercialization obviously touch upon a lot of civil issues and commercial issues, and civil law branch will definitely play an even increasingly important role in the future. So I think that's a very good start for this year. And we will, of course, look forward to more activities in next year, in particular in the civil branch. So now, since Anna has just joined, then I think may I invite Justice Tom to give his brief report and to look to the future's operation of his branch.
Thank you, Chief Justice, and also other justices of Asgardia. Just to report on my activities in the last 1 year, the most notable activity was an interview in which I discussed matters that address the constitutional law of Asgardia, and as you know that the Constitution is the most fundamental law of any state, including Asgardia. And I did point out that Asgardia has a very liberal constitution that gives liberal rights, and did point out that one of the challenges that remain for both the parliament and for the court is how to balance those rights with the issue of their limitation, because rights are not absolute. And I gave an example of the recognition of the right to property in Asgardia, and a situation whereby that the state of Asgardia needs to put a railway line across property owned by the citizens, and it has to acquire. So that which at times is referred to as compulsory acquisition. So that has to be balanced with despite the right to property, the citizens cannot refuse. So the state has to do what is referred to as compulsory acquisition, but be balanced with just and prompt compensation. So in essence, I pointed out that across that stream of rights is also the fact that the courts and the parliament in their legislation has to bring out the concept that if there's any limitation, then it has to be reasonable, what is acceptable in a democratic society. Necessary to point out in the interview that Asgardia presents a very unique situation whereby that it's a state in space, and the concept of space, and it's the concept of state formation. Constantly, of course, we expect it to keep on changing, and Asgardia is precedent setting, because we say state is res communis, open heritage, and not capable of being owned, but Asgardia is part of that evolution of bringing new ideas, what we call at times also terra nullius, that space is capable of being owned. And also brought out the concept of how do we then have new states. There's of course the existing theories of constitutive theory and declarative theory, which I did point out that again, Asgardia is precedent setting in both the international law and constitutional law, in the sense that in the concept of this declaratory theory, which seems to support that idea, is that Asgardia has already announced and declared its nationhood and statehood, and therefore it's upon other states to recognize that fact. So it was an opportunity to interact and to publicize the views to the citizens of Asgardia. I've not dealt with any dispute resolutions, but I do hope that in the future I'll have an opportunity to serve the nation in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Tom. We know that Constitution is fundamental to a nation. And Asgardia, I think from the very beginning, have already had its own constitution, which is very unique for us, I think, as a space nation. So I think we're very grateful that you are able to take over the role to serve for the constitutional branch. So I think that really something that we can look into the future developments. I think in particular, constitutional developments. We have noticed that after 5 years, there's a need to amend the constitution, I think, which was carried out, I think, a few months back. and we have successfully witnessed the development of the constitution and the success development of our nation, which is rather vital. And I'm sure, I think more issues will come up, as you have mentioned, the importance of constitution and also a lot of legal issues that are related to the constitution. So which is the mother law of all other laws. So thank you very much. Now, may I invite Justice Anna to speak? Anna, can you hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Yun, and hello, everyone. And I am very sorry, apologize, because here in Chile, today we are still in the 1st of November. And thus I made a mistake thinking that this will be tomorrow at this time. So I'm very sorry about that. Today here is still 1st. That's why I had this confusion, you know. But regarding to the question you are asking me, of course, for me, it is an honor to be part of Asgardia. And in the same way as Tom already explained, me personally, during this year, I also had the chance to have to work on an interview that was conducted by Asgardia. And in particularly, we were thinking about a proposal of a new, let's say, treaty or international law for Asgardia, for the administrative system, and for the judiciary system. And about that, what we did, it was a comparison, in fact, with what it is already in place. For example, the proliferation or the availability of several international courts, highlighting the system of the European Union, for example, or of the Council of Europe, that has 2 different judiciary international courts, both of them with some similarities and some differences. And also, I was asked also how I tackled the studies in as a professor in Chile, teaching international law, and why it's relevant also to have Asgardia as an example of what Yoon already have said, as a space nation. I think maybe the possibility to think or to organize our world beyond the borders and the boundaries that we do have on Earth, and that we could make a proposal with more solidarity and unifying certain criteria, basic criteria of principles and of international law applicable also to not only our foreign relations, but also to our relations that we are going to have belonging, going beyond our citizenships, origins, and etc. So it's a proposal, I would say, maybe also in the way that the space law, no, or like the other treaties, not only in treaties that are part of the domestic law when the countries ratify them, but let's say other treaties or covenants that are worldwide, no, like maybe pollution or how do I'm thinking in Spanish, and that's why I am a bit slower, meaning what I want to say is that there are certain regulations that are also common to all the states. So let's say we don't have the universal system with United Nations, we don't have the regional systems, and now I would say we are maybe with the examples that we already have universally or regionally, we are going to also identify or the efficiency and what is maybe has worked properly with all these pieces of legislation, internationally speaking, and that we can also be able to use them for the future regulations for Asgardia. So I think maybe some of them are work in progress, meaning Excuse me. My excuse me, my doubt will be how we can make maybe more activities that will be common, let's say, not only on the part of us as academics, and that we have these interviews, but this is something individually. What I try to say is that perhaps webinars or other activities that we have been thinking, how we can do that all together, because for that I think I lack a little bit of instructions or maybe of possibilities on how to do these webinars. Meanwhile, we cannot all be together in one place. So I think maybe with Zoom or thinking in certain concrete thematics or areas of expertise in our fields, how we are going to maybe make a convergence and tackle maybe common issues among all of us. So this will be maybe my question, how we are going to instrumentalize this network to go maybe a bit more beyond, I don't know, I am not very familiar or on all the web page of Asgardia. For example, I know that I have a lot of contacts there in a way that I think similar to Facebook or to other nets, but I don't know very well how to use them and how to, for example, accept all that persons. So maybe to make more, to be able to profit more about this pool of network, and maybe make it more, also be able to make more all together. And that is why today I wanted to join this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, just Anna. I noticed that just Carrie has some problem with the video. I assume I think this should be fine. Just Anna has already mentioned about her activities in the past year, and also mentioned about her views regarding the future activities and also her visions regarding her branch of work. Administrative law obviously is very important. I think sometimes we also combine with the constitutional law, but administrative law has its own unique feature, which tries to make sure that all the government entities and officials, civil servants to function properly and understand the rules in an efficient and useful manner. So I think that's why we believe that Justice Anna will be able to play its own role to ensure the normal and appropriate function, of our government and the judicial system. So thank you very much. So five of us, I think actually the five justices have already put forward our views for the future and also summarized what we have done. In a way, I think very satisfied. I think first of all, I think thank you very much. I think for willing to joining the judiciary, which is definitely a heavy burden on all of you. And I noticed that Justice Thomas have to got up so early with the lights still on, I can see. But for all of us, I think with many of you will still have to stay till late into the night. So I think that's rather useful to see that we have some kind of synergy among all of ourselves. And like Justice Anna has mentioned, that kind of a convergence, I think really can flow out from our work. I think after all these years, we can see that Asgardia has already developed in a very healthy and rapid manner and have been on the right track. Not only when we look at the reports regarding the Asgardian government, parliament, I think a lot of activities has been carried out. But when we reflect on what we have done, we have already looked at the rules that should be made. We have already had the procedural rules. We have the judicial law, that is something which was done last year, not this year. So that's why I did not include in my report, which is a fundamental law that really governs the judiciary. I drafted it for the consideration by the parliament. I think that's one major part. But from other parts, we also can see that within this 1 year, we have interviews, we have webinars, we have given expert opinions, we have a close communication with the public, with the community. We try to show them we, the judiciary, are independent, neutral, and impartial. I think this is rather important for further healthy development of our judicial system. We should not be in a high profile. I think we should keep to the low profile. I think that's the way to show our independence, show our impartiality. So I think that's something I think we all us, I think 5 justices should always keep in mind. I think very important for the normal proper functioning of the judiciary. As I have mentioned, after the appointment of justice, 5 of us were not able to meet in person, although I have already had a chance before the pandemic to meet the other major officials in the government and the parliamentarians in Moscow and Vienna. I hope that in the year 2023, we will be able to meet in person in Vienna or Moscow or probably Greece, which were also brought to the attention of the government, brought to the head of the nation. I think this, of course, will involve a lot of budgetary planning of our nation and also other logistic arrangements. So I think that's something I think hope that I will, once I get clear pictures, I will report back to all of you so that we will be able to meet in person to discuss about the issues of our common interest. I think that's rather important for us to look further, to reflect upon what we have done right or what can be further improved. So that's my plan. I think probably the next stage. I hope that our next meeting will not we don't need to wait for too long, and we don't need to really only focus on the online Zoom meeting, but we hopefully will be able to meet in person and have a casual chatting, have also informal communications on the issues. So with this, I would like to ask justices any questions or any comments that you have in mind before we close this meeting.
If it would be possible to get a brochure or of what you have already said, or maybe everything is already in the web, or if we could maybe have a set of basic documents that we could maybe be able to work on them or go through them and be prepared for the next meeting.
Thank you very much, just Anna. For the judiciary legislation that have already been put online, which was discussed, deliberated in the parliament last year. So I think that will be available. For the draft procedural rules, I have only get it done in September. So I've already sent to the relevant parties in our nation for their review, for consideration. So which I think probably will still take some time. It's quite complicated set of rules, around 30 to 50 pages. But I think that will be something we very specific, very detailed. I think once this is done, definitely we should send out to all the justices to have some comments, I think, before we put it into practice. So I think that's a normal consideration. Regarding other part, yes, I see that Justice Filou has already.
You have received that, yeah? Yeah. What is it? This one? Sorry for interrupting. Have you received all? You have received?
Me not, but I find it wonderful, the book.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I have not
All
yet
right. Okay.
received.
You should get it.
Yeah, thank you. I think Marilyn, hopefully, I think still online, I think to provide the support. If possible, I think we should make sure that every justice should receive a brochure about our nation constitution hard copy. So I think that will be rather useful. I think if Marilyn is still online, I think that will be good. But I still will say, yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think this will definitely be done. And I think this will also provide a very good starting point for all of us to look into the work that we need to get done. And constitution is always so important. So that's why I think we can go from this part and then continue to the next step. And I hope that with our efforts, we should be able to lead our judicial system to a new high level. So I would like to thank you very much, and I hope that all of you now knows what we have already been done, and then we know what will be the next step for all of us. So if there are no other comments, I think may I declare the closure of this meeting. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you, communicating with you through emails or other channels. Thank you very much. Thank you.